I don't know if I would call it art but more of a path. But yes, I am convinced there is. I am a few years into this and I think it comes down to the right kinds of knowledge applied the right ways and a whole lot of elbow grease on our part to make that happen. You get out of it what you put in. Like anything else in this world, nothing of real worth comes for free. You will benefit from this in far more ways than simply avoiding and managing narcissists though. I plan to start writing about all this on the Healing from NPD Abuse space, as soon as I finish planning an outline and as time permits. You can follow me as well as that space if you are interested in reading more on this stuff. Here is a bit of the stuff I have culled out. Awareness and full complete acceptance of the existence of personality disorders and what that actually means. Dispelling ignorance, innocence, and naivety. Trauma defense mechanisms from identifying them and unwinding them. CPTSD, PTSD, dissociation, magical thinking, polyneism, trauma bonding, infantile regression, cognitive dissonance, coping with and overcoming emotional dependency, inability to love or trust, anhedonia and depression, learned helplessness, financial dependence, etc. Techniques and strategies to heal and application of them. There are many different things and they require different tools. How to manage more permanent conditions or symptoms of trauma that cannot be undone. How to do a proper honest self-inventory to identify opportunities for growth, validating your experience and working through the stages of grief and coming to acceptance, identifying the difference between healthy and unhealthy guilt, shame, anger. Why all our emotions, even anger, are crucial to healthy recovery and how they should apply. Forgiveness, letting go. What that actually means and key components of being successful and safe with it. Tie in 12 steps, and spirituality. What to expect, how it is similar and how it is unique. Common slumps, questions, and plateaus. How to get unstuck. Re-engaging with humanity, moving on, knowing when you are ready for a relationship. Grieving the loss of your soulmate and relationship, coming to terms with what you have lost, obtaining closure without a dependency on the abuser. Learn to identify abusive behavior. Many will have known nothing else and don't actually understand what they are being abused and what normal looks like. Understanding what constitutes emotional abuse and how to identify that you are a victim of it. Being able to identify it for what it is really important. Understand the gravity of the damage done by emotional abuse. Victim blaming, shaming. Why it is wrong and what steps to take to minimize exposure to it. What to expect from those trying to help. How to get help and how to measure if it is helping or hurting your recovery. Properly place blame and accountability. Own your decisions, reject responsibility for the abuse. Culpability. Common false dichotomies and rebuttals. Identify family and childhood dynamics and impacts. Being the child of a narcissistic parent, roles assigned in this unhealthy family dynamic and how it affects the child. Additional secondary roles. Children may adopt adaptations of parenting styles by cluster B parents. How to deal and move forward with narcissistic parent families. Trauma bonding. Identifying the symptoms of trauma bonding. Understanding how codependence, misused term, overlaps with addiction and trauma in the context of traumatic bonding. Understanding the addiction aspect and how to overcome it. Identifying which biochemicals and hormones in your brain are affecting you as well as how to correct dysregulation of each of them. Learning the difference between intensity and intimacy and learning to acclimate back to normal. Learning which dysfunctional options to cope with betrayal apply to your situation. Learning how to address them. Identify the different types of betrayal that lead to traumatic bonding and be able to identify them and know which applies to you in your life. Be aware of and able to identify the patterns and factors that contribute to strengthening a trauma bond. Learn which you are susceptible to and how they apply to your current situation. Be able to identify which addictive and compulsive relationship patterns, and trauma solutions you engaged in that contributed to you becoming trapped and trauma bonded. Know the differences between healthy and unhealthy bonds and how to form healthy ones. Boundary development. Covering that huge topic is separate to trauma bonding role development. This is essential when no contact is not an option. It teaches you to establish a new type of interaction with your abuser. Trauma resolution. Discover and diminish the power of the original events. This reduces reactivity. Systems change. For many, this may be a pattern. This involves moving into non-exploitative relationships. Sense of self. For many, this process may have been disrupted during childhood. For others, it may just have been destroyed in this last relationship. Either way, it needs to be restored and healthy. A big topic again, probably will cover it with boundary development. How to develop your own personal recovery plan. Workplace narcissists coping with legal divorce, how it differs across disorders and is affected by comorbidities, etc. What to expect, and how to be prepared. Child custody. Co-parenting, parallel parenting, controlled chaos. Helping your children when full custody is not an option. Parental alienation. Divorce and parental poisoning and how to address and counter it. How to find a proper therapist. False charges and allegations. Protecting yourself from legal abuse. Restraining orders and safety plans. When to call the police or authorities. Understanding the different kinds of disorders and adaptions and how that affects detection, legal, and engagement. Rules of engagement. Principles. Adaptions for different disorders. Understanding and deciphering psychobabble. Resistance tactics. Do's and don'ts. How did they control you? Building your cluster B radar. Manipulation. What it is, how it works and close to 100 tactics. Persuasion and influence factors and principles. Seduction and how it works. Rules of power. How loss and other factors affect the choices we make across humanity in all societies and how they can be used against you. Non-verbals and tells. Boundaries. Self-love. Yes, this actually important, and yes, I know it pisses people off because it is usually just a bunch of hand-waving. This is just a container term for all the self-XYZ stuff that a healthy person should have: self-understanding, self-acceptance, self-appreciation, self-respect, self-forgiveness, self-protection, self-pampering, self-validation, knowing your weakness and levers and hardening them using various strategies, learning more about your personality and how you experience the world, implement that cluster B radar, and when it goes off, employ some additional defense mechanisms. Different types of boundaries. Different boundaries depending on the nature of the relationship. How to firm them up and hold them. Still, a work in progress, and I am still putting thoughts together, but I think all of this makes one fairly off limits to narcissists as well as any other toxic and abusive individual in any environment you may encounter them. They will hopefully look elsewhere.